So I wanted to answer a question about, do you need to come from a musical family to be a musician or to be good at music? And you probably guessed, but the answer is no. I don't think you do. I didn't necessarily come from any family of musicians or anything like that. But there was one influence that I think, and amongst many, but a major influence that led to me playing bass, and which was my first instrument. Well, I wanted to do this. I wanted to slap the bass. And the first influence I think I would say would be probably my dad. And he wasn't a musician, but he was what I would call a music appreciator. And he listened to music intently. He would listen to the components of music. He would listen to the bass line, the background vocals. He listened to all the different little aspects of music that might get overlooked. And he appreciated them, and he knew them. For instance, I remember we were listening, he loved all kinds of music, and we were listening once to Tupac. And I must have been a teenager, and the Tupac song, So Many Tears, has this little harmonica riff in it. And it's just this little, this little 3-note riff that happens in this Tupac song. And my dad's like, oh, that's from Stevie Wonder. I'm like, oh, so he knew this little sample from a Stevie Wonder harmonica solo that Tupac used in his song. And he would say, oh, listen to the bass line here. And I would listen to that stuff. So much so that I wanted to get a bass eventually. I was like, I want to play bass. And I don't remember this, but my dad took me to a music shop, and I grabbed the bass and started playing it, I guess. More so than he knew, because I must have been going to music shops. But I don't remember this moment, but he says, did you know how to do that? Because I was immediately trying to figure stuff out on the instrument and just putting my hands on it. And I said, no, but I've been thinking about it a lot. So, 1, no, you do not need to come from a musical family. But 2, there needs to be some sort of spark, something that interests you in music and keeps you going and interested. You have to have that. There needs to, when I have any private students, the first thing I ask them is, why are you here? And some people have an answer, some people don't. And that's okay as well. So I knew exactly why I got a bass. I heard the song Tommy the Cat by Primus, and I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And as I got older, I got into different music, and I started playing guitar too. I kept playing bass, played bass through the orchestra in high school. I played that bass that you see right here behind me. That upright bass, I played that in the orchestra. I played electric bass in jazz band, and I started when I was 11, and by the time I was 14, I was composing music and writing music and reading music at a intermediate beginner level. And it wasn't until I was about 16 that I was able to sight read and play through charts and big band charts, and was playing big band in junior and senior year in high school. And from then on, I had a lot of different musical mentors. My dad was a plumber, but he had one of his plumbers that worked for him was a guy named Steve, and he played bass, and he was a big classic rock fan, and he taught me the pentatonic scale. But he taught me it to me in a peculiar way. He taught it to me going up the neck, and I never forgot that, because that was the first thing he taught me. And he told me to make sure to use my pinky when doing that. I'm glad he did, because I find, and you don't have to use your pinky all the time. It depends on what you're doing. This bass is kind of large, but so especially between frets 1 and 5, it's a freaking huge scale length on this thing. So kind of have to, especially on this big acoustic bass. But no, you don't need to, but you need inspiration, and you need to have that. It's something that keeps you inspired and keeps you coming back, keeps you wanting to learn. I think that's the most important thing. And that'll change over the years, and it'll come and go. For me, it was bass, and then I got into classical guitar and classical music, actually, and really wanted to be a composer. And I essentially started composing right away. The moment I could read music, I was grabbing the Beethoven symphony scores. I'd go to my library, I would grab Fortunately at this time, the library had music scores. They had a handful of Beethoven symphonies, and then I'd go to the CD section and I would get it. Beethoven Symphony Number 8. Cool, never heard this. Pop in the CD, and boom, I'd stare at the score, and I learned to read the score of a Beethoven symphony. And I did that eventually with every single Beethoven symphony. And then I would, at this time as well, this was in the early 2000s, Barnes & Noble would actually carry sheet music scores. Like I bought Stravinsky's Rite of Spring at Barnes & Noble. I still have my copy. I bought The Firebird at Barnes & Noble. I bought Holst, The Planets, the score to all these, even some Schoenberg pieces. Transfigured Night for String Sextet, an amazing piece. I think to me, that's like my favorite of Schoenberg's work. And it's not full total 12 tone. It's kind of romantic, but super out too, but also very cool. So I dug that stuff and was reading the scores, and I actually was sort of disillusioned with learning music theory, because by the time I started learning music theory, I had already been composing and even doing some classical guitar arranging, finding piano pieces and playing them on the guitar, playing through the Bach sonatas and partitas on guitar. And, I learned, figured bass and all this stuff, and don't use parallel fifths. And I'd look at a Stravinsky score and I'd see parallel fifths all over the place. I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't use parallel fifths. Like, all these rules are broken. So learning music theory, and this is also a common side tangent, I guess, but learning music theory can hinder your creativity if you let it. If you take these rules and think they're rules rather than just labels for things people do. And I in some ways let it affect me for a period of time. And then I had to branch out. Everything I had written was very like 1 chord, 5 chord, idiom. And I still gravitate towards that. I like music that's very inside and then steps outside. You got to be inside to go outside. And all that being said, find the passion in music, find things that keep you going. Have musical mentors. I had another mentor named Bob Hahn. He passed away in 2015. And he was a big influence on me on learning jazz. He put jazz standards in front of me. And I would go jam with him. He was the owner of a music shop. He's probably in his 70s. He had to have been in his like early 70s when I first met him. And I have his guitar now. I have his CB Hill, which is a killer archtop. He had this guitar custom made by CB Hill. He makes all Ron Eshtes guitars, or CB Hill does, but he doesn't make guitars anymore. But this archtop is it's a priceless guitar. The upper range on it just sounds phenomenal. Guitars in the upper, like archtops usually in the upper range, sound very tinny. I'm not plugged in or anything. Listen to this. I mean, the resonance on that note, the sustain on an upper note like that is just, especially if I don't mute the other strings. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's what you get for a handcrafted instrument. This guitar's, I don't know what this guitar would be worth. But yeah, so I have this guitar, but no, going back to my original topic, you don't need to come from a musical family or anything. You just need to have that drive, that burning inside you that wants to express yourself. And that's true with art, that's true with music, with anything. You have to have something. For instance, I love visual art. I love paintings and stuff. Do I practice painting? No, I don't. Therefore, I'm not going to create any good paintings. I paint like Jackson Pollock or like shapes and stuff. It's fun, but I enjoy doing it whenever I do it. I grade it on canvas, but I don't actually practice art. I don't practice drawing a face. I couldn't draw a face to save my life. So your energy is going to go to or your growth will happen where you put in the time. This video is already too long, but I hope you got the message, and that's about it. All I wanted to talk about was just, do you need to come from a ton of musical influences around you? Not necessarily. You just need a couple people at the right times in your life to point you in the right direction. And I think I was lucky enough to have a lot of those people near me. So I'll take you out with a little tune I wrote called Float. It's available everywhere. I play it on every little video I've been doing lately, so I'll do it again. All right. Peace out. I'm a composer. I've got a bunch of music available on this channel. Bunch of music available for streaming. My string quartet is under Gemini Strings. That might change someday, but as for now, that's all I got. Peace out.